Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to take everyday situations and reveal the hidden mathematical language powering them. Today, we're focusing on integers and integer operations in real-life problems. Now, if you've ever thought math was just abstract numbers stuck on a chalkboard, well, prepare to see it completely differently. We are going to decode the exact math that you're already doing in your head every single day.
So, let's dive right into this by asking a really simple question about your wallet. Have you ever spent more money than you actually had on hand? Or, maybe you've owed a friend a few pesos, or you've checked the weather and noticed a dropping temperature. Because here's the secret. If you've ever navigated a debt, tracked a changing climate, or even lost points in a video game, you already know advanced math intuitively. You're actually already speaking the language of integers.
Here is our roadmap for today. First, the language of real life. Second, we'll meet the integer family. Third, adding and subtracting reality. Fourth, multiplying and dividing integers. And finally, number 5, the monthly budget challenge.
Okay, let's kick things off with Section 1, the language of real life, translating ups and downs. Think about it like this. Every single time you earn money or gain points, you're experiencing a positive. Earning an income of 500 pesos from selling vegetables, putting 200 pesos into savings, or racking up 5 points in a game, these all represent an upward trajectory, right? We call these positive situations. But on the flip side, paying 120 peso fare, borrowing 300 pesos from a buddy, or seeing the temperature drop by 2 degrees, those represent a loss, a debt, or a decrease. These are our negative situations. Our lives are basically just a constant balancing act between these two sides.
Moving right along to Section 2, meet the integer family. Who belongs and who doesn't?
So, the absolutely crucial point here is that integers perfectly capture these opposites. They act as our positive and negative anchors. And right in the middle, that's 0, sitting there as our neutral starting point. Think of integers kind of like a mirror. If you step forward 3 paces, that's a positive 3. Step backward 3 paces, that's a negative 3. They are whole, complete steps. And 0 is exactly where you started before you moved at all. It represents a state of being perfectly even. Literally, no gain and no loss.
Now, here is where we draw a hard line. Fractions and decimals, they simply do not get an invite to the integer family party. Look at -5, -1, 0, 3, 10. These are solid unbroken numbers. But things like 1/2, 0.75, or -2.5, those represent parts of a whole. Because of that, they're completely excluded from the integer set. Integers are strictly whole numbers and their exact opposites. No exceptions.
All right, Section 3, adding and subtracting reality, combining gains and losses. When you're adding integers that have different signs, like, say, an income and an expense, just follow these 3 really simple steps to prevent any cognitive overload. First up, compare the absolute values. That just means looking at the raw numbers themselves for a second, totally ignoring whether they are positive or negative. Second, subtract the smaller number from the larger one. And finally, step 3, look back at your original numbers and just keep the sign of whichever one was larger. It's a quick, totally logical checklist to make sure you never get your signs mixed up. Let's look at some raw math equations side by side, combining positives and negatives using those exact rules we just learned. First up, we've got a positive 950 plus a negative 420. Following our rule, we just subtract 420 from 950, which gets us 530. And since the positive number, 950, is larger, our answer stays a positive 530. Next, a negative 150 plus a positive 90 leaves us with a negative 60. And for the last one, a negative 3 plus a positive 8 gives us a positive 5. Pretty straightforward, right?
But here is where it gets cool. Look at how those abstract equations instantly translate into the real world. That first equation, that's actually a sari-sari store making 950 pesos in sales, but spending 420 pesos on supplies, leaving them with a net gain of 530 pesos. That second equation was a learner who owed 150 pesos, meaning negative 150, but paid back 90, meaning they still owe 60 pesos. And the third? That was a chilly morning at 3 degrees below 0 that warmed up by 8 degrees, bringing the new temperature to a really pleasant 5 degrees above 0.
Let's scale things up in Section 4, multiplying and dividing integers, scaling up the reality. The rule for this one is beautifully simple. Identical signs give you a positive result, while clashing signs always result in a negative. Think about it. If you multiply or divide 2 positive numbers, or 2 negative numbers, they sort of agree with each other, right? So you get a positive answer. But if you mix a positive and a negative,
Different signs, they clash, and your answer will always be negative. It's this perfect binary rule that is just incredibly satisfying to apply. So what does that look like in practice? Well, if you lose 3 points for 4 consecutive rounds in a game, you simply multiply a negative by a positive. You see that clash of signs? -3 times +4 equals -12. You're down 12 points total. And what if you and 5 friends have a shared debt? If the 6 of you owe a total of 24 pesos, that is a -24. Divide that -24 by a +6 people, and we have a clash of signs again, which gives us a -4. Everyone owes 4 pesos.
And now for our final test, Section 5, the monthly budget challenge, Jane's finances.
Let's take a peek at Jane's monthly budget. Her hard-earned income is our positive anchor, but it's continuously chipped away by a total gauntlet of negative integer expenses. She earns a very solid 8,000 pesos. That's a positive. But then, the realities of life hit. Food is an expense of 3,000 pesos, which is a negative integer. Transportation is -1,200, electricity takes another -1,500. Water is -600, and other needs subtract another -1,000 pesos. Now, instead of seeing this as subtraction, we are actually adding a series of negative integers to our positive income.
So, let's do the math. By adding all those negative expenses together, we get a total of -7,300. When we combine that with her positive 8,000 income, spoiler alert, we discover Jane has a successful positive remaining budget of 700 pesos. When we used the rules of integer addition, we compared those absolute values. 8,000 is obviously larger than 7,300. We subtracted the smaller from the larger, getting 700, and kept the sign of the larger absolute value, which is positive. Jane is officially in the green. She actually has savings this month.
So the next time you're tracking your savings, splitting a bill, or calculating a game score, ask yourself, how can you leverage these simple rules of integers to empower your own choices? By framing your everyday gains and losses as positive and negative integers, you aren't just doing math, you're gaining a really structured view of your entire life. If every decision you make is either a positive or negative integer, what's the net worth of your daily choices? Keep exploring, keep learning, and I will catch you on the next explainer.